Well, I welcome this U-turn, but the unfortunate truth is this Conservative government is in complete chaos. I don't think the Chancellor has the credibility to make all the changes that are needed, and I think he has to go. And I think that would really restore confidence.
But they realised they'd made a mistake, and surely by owning their mistake, they will gain more respect, not only from the British people, but also from the markets.
Well, I welcome the U-turn, but the Chancellor is saying today that it was just a distraction from the rest of the package, and the whole plan, he says, is okay. That's not what Liberal Democrats think, and I don't think that's what many people think. Your commentators today have been pointing out quite rightly that the 45p was only a small part of the overall package. If you look at things like the cut in corporation tax, that's worth £18 billion a year, much of which is going to the big banks and to large corporations. Liberal Democrats wouldn't make that cut. They're refusing to do the windfall tax properly, which is leaving tens of billions of pounds on the table, which is just going to the large oil and gas companies. So there's money there, which if the Chancellor and this government could completely change approach, that money could be used to make sure we weren't having to borrow so much, and that would mean there'd be less pressure on people's mortgages, and millions of families are struggling with their mortgages. Plus, there'd be some money left over to ensure there weren't cuts to the health service, and we could actually help those who are really struggling this winter. So the government's plan, such as it is totally wrong in my view. This is a welcome change, but it's a small change. We need a far more radical overhaul of the budget. We need it soon, and we need it to be done in a transparent way. And I come to the conclusion, regrettably, that I think this Chancellor can't deliver that.
A cabinet's about collective responsibility, as we're often told, but if the cabinet didn't know about it, how can they be responsible?
Well, you make a fair point, Kay. That's why I think the Chancellor should carry the can. There are obviously questions about the Prime Minister too, but the Chancellor, the Prime Minister told us yesterday, made this decision. I think, therefore, he's right to U-turn on it, but the whole strategy that he put forward to Parliament, I think, is wrong. I think it's quite dangerous, actually. I'm really worried as we go towards this winter that there are millions of struggling families, millions of pensioners, huge numbers of businesses who will really be in trouble. And I don't think the government have provided sufficient help. I don't think they've provided the right type of help. Just the time, not only were they cutting taxes for the rich, but they were cutting tax for the largest banks. They were cutting tax for the biggest corporations. They were letting the oil and gas companies off paying their fair share. And by doing that, they've not controlled borrowing. That has put a pressure on interest rates. They've not provided the level of help that could be provided. So I'm afraid it's quite an ideological approach from the Conservative government. And I think what our economy needs, what our people need, is a proper plan, a proper economic plan, which is fair and which would actually get the growth that we need. I mean, that's the irony. They say this is all about growth, but I'm afraid it's got so many flaws in it, it's actually going to undermine the prospects for the British economy.
Now, the Chancellor has already been asked this morning whether he should consider his position. He says no. What do you think?
Well, let's remember 24 hours ago, the Prime Minister was saying that the 45p rate would stay, that cut that they proposed would stay, and they've U-turned dramatically in 24 hours. I think the Chancellor really needs to consider his position. He has to go, and he may be saying he's staying today, but a day, they used to say a week's a long time in politics. A day is a long time in politics, and I think he must go by the end of the day.
I mean, I'm reading on social media that his right-hand man, who I was chatting to on the, I'm not sure he'd call it a chat, but I was speaking to on the programme in the last hour, suggestions that, he might well be the fall guy. He was the one that came up with the paper that suggested that this was a good idea. And even as part of my interview, he still said it made economic sense. What do you think?
Well, it's very unedifying, isn't it? They're each blaming each other. Yesterday, the Prime Minister was blaming the Chancellor. The Chancellor's blaming his deputy. This shows my central point. This is a government in chaos. It's politically unstable, which is bad of itself. It's got the wrong economic ideas. The fact that he was trying to defend it still shows how completely out of touch they are. And this is my fear. If you have a government that's out of touch, that takes people for granted, that doesn't give people the fair deal they deserve. People going to work, doing the right thing, getting up, educating the kids, looking after neighbours. People are trying to do the right thing, but they've got a government that's not behind them. And it's clear by almost everything that they say and they do, the Conservatives have just lost their way. And, I can't wait to the moment when we can get them out of power in an election. But in the meantime, the people who've been responsible for this should go, and they need to clear up the mess. I don't think they should be holding their conference at the moment. You shouldn't be going to cocktail parties and sipping champagne. They should be back at the desks. They should be putting this right. They should be coming to Parliament and showing that they're changed fundamentally. And the fact that they won't and aren't, I think, is extremely bad for our country.
But rather, isn't this democracy in action? Aren't we seeing the government reacting to their backbenchers who they wouldn't allow this to get through Parliament, along with the opposition parties who also would have voted against this? So as a result, the government has listened.
Well, it's all internal Tory party politics, but it's not proper democracy. That should happen in the House of Commons. They should come and be accountable to MPs across the country of all political parties and all views. Our country needs to come together. We need a strategy that can unite our great country, a country that has so much potential and is being let down at the moment by this government. And one of the reasons why people are protesting, why people are alarmed, anxious, frankly terrified in some cases, is because they just feel that there's this gap at the top, and they feel that the Prime Minister, the Chancellor, the whole Conservative cabinet doesn't get it, or if they get it, they don't care. And that's not good enough.
Good to talk to you. Thanks for joining us.